So, welcome back to Third Age Reforged, and to the abyss, apparently, that lurks next to Moria, because we're going to be doing the Moria replay that I've been talking about for a little while. I figured as though it was about time that we got right onto it after all. It is a very iconic map, one that we have seen several times in the past, of course, which is why it's been pushed back for a little while now, because I have been given sort of a little sort of spate of new content that I could do, and obviously it's always better to push out some stuff that is completely brand new and scenarios that people have worked hard on, which is why this Moria replay has been delayed just a little bit. But we are here now to one of the most recognisable maps, one that has remained unchanged ever since vanilla, for good reason, because Moria, as it is pretty much exactly what you'd expect of it, really. It's a dwarven hold, it's very choke pointy, fairly easy to defend in many ways, although for both sides really it's not going to be a battle of obviously micro, because there's only so many ways that you can approach Moria really, but it really is an exercise in how to commit your resources and how you sort of go about things in that way, because if you commit them incorrectly you could find yourself having not enough left to get the job done. This is especially true, I think, for the defenders more so than it is for the attackers, but it does still apply to both really. We'll go through the attackers first and foremost. I'll try and go through the army compositions a little bit more quickly, because this is a map and these are all factions that we've seen several times in the past, so we're going to try and get right on into it as well. So, we have Mordor, played by Bilbo T. Baggins. He's got some Nazgul books, of course, as well as some Troll Drummers to keep his lower tier units in line, and both Temple Executioners and Temple Guards. So a big committal of money into the elites, but this is something that Mordor can do. I'm not sure I'd recommend it on Moria unless you knew that other players were going to go really numbers heavy. Otherwise, on Moria, one mistake you can make as the attackers is to go too much into your elites, because you're not going to have the numbers to be able to withstand the barrage of arrows, crossbow bolts and javelins that they are going to inflict upon you. There's going to be no avoiding that. So hopefully he's gone for some numbers as well, which it looks like he has, to be fair. I mean, Olag High is another big committal of money, as well as some Orc fodder and the Uruk Captain. So yeah, I think I wouldn't recommend going for all of these elite units, to be honest with you, as Mordor going on the attackers against Moria, because I think it's just too much money for units that you're going to have to save until the end. Dunheim Shadow Bows are not quite in the same price category as them, and they will be useful in a siege, so I don't mind too much about their inclusion. Some upgraded Orc Maulers. Again, I question whether the armour upgrade, to be honest with you, is entirely necessary here. It makes them a little bit more resilient, but against arrows they're still going to be very, very poor, and against the quality of units you're going to be facing on the attack like this, I don't really know if the armour upgrade is going to make all that much of a difference, to be honest with you. There is some Orc fodder in there is some Blackguard of Barad-dûr, some more Orc Maulers and some more Orc Javelins. I like the inclusion of the Maulers and the Javelins though, with the inevitable Dwarves being on the defence, and also some Archers, but I don't think he's got enough in terms of numbers around those units. I mean, it's okay if he's playing the supporting role and then later on he comes in with his elites to try and mop up, but he may not be the only attacker to have that in mind unless they were coordinating beforehand, which in these big games, to be honest with you, sometimes I doubt. Then we have Big Butt Cheeks, who's playing as Isengard. He's got some Dunlending clansmen, so they're going to be pushing up the ram, of course. Their enhanced anti-cavalry bonus not really going to be all that useful excuse me, on Moria against some Dwarven defenders primarily. Uruk-hai infantry, they'll be decent. Again, they're a little bit more expensive than a lot of other standard Orc infantry, but they are also the most well-rounded units of Orc line infantry. The Guardians of Khazad-Dum have got a little bit more of a defensive slant to them, whereas the Uruk-hai infantry are a little bit better at dishing out a bit of punishment as well. Uruk-hai Pikemen, again, the kind of unit that will only really be useful later in the battle when a lot of the defending ammunition has been expended. If you commit them too early, they're going to be easy pickings. Even with the decent armour that Uruk-hai Pikemen have, the lack of a shield is still going to make them a big target for any archers, crossbowmen, javelins and axe throwers that are on the defence. Trolls of the White Hand, so again, more trolls. Going to be useful, but they do need a lot of support to be fully effective. And then back here we of course have the Uruk-hai crossbowmen. Again, good choice, because if you can get them into position they're going to do a lot of damage to the defenders. And some Nazkai, and I think there's some Snaga skirmishers in there as well, which are useful for the same reason that the Orc Javelins are. Again, more of a well-rounded force. He's gone for a lot of pikes and infantry, crossmen, so the holy trinity really of the Isengard faction, with a bit of elite units and then some lower tier support. So standard fare for Isengard, to be honest with you, not all that surprising. And then over on this side we have another Mordor army played by Proxima Centuri. He's gone for some around on halberds again. I like them, but they are going to be focused down by archers, more likely than not. But the armour piercing phalanx will be useful if they can use it effectively. some Temple Guard, some Olag High, some Uruk Captains, some upgraded Temple Executioners. So again, a massive committal of money in here. When I think over on this side, honestly, like, they need more numbers. On Moria, like, in the early game, you just have to throw units in and hope that you can sort of get the defenders to use up all of their ammunition. I don't think they've got enough disposable fodder over on this side, to be honest with you. I think both of the Mordor players may be getting a little bit greedy with their elites. Orc Maulers, Sauron's Will, a couple of units of Orc Javelins in there as well. So again, a lot of AP, which I don't mind, and there's more Orc Maulers back here, so a lot of AP indeed. None of it is shielded though. All of these units, in fact, that Proxima Century has that we can see are going to be vulnerable to missile play, except the Trolls. But again, the Trolls without any sort of support around them are going to get destroyed anyway. So I'm not so sure about the attacking composition on this side, to be honest with you. I think if the defenders play it correctly, they could be in for a good time, but we shall see. Then we have Renizoras, who has got some Uruk-hai Pikemen, some Uruk-hai Infantry as well. So again, I imagine it's going to be fairly standard over here. He's gone for some Baneguard, which is not the worst choice by any means, more AP. Decently survivable compared to the other options as well. Some Uruk-hai Archers just to put some pressure on. We have got some Uruk-hai Pikemen, some more Baneguard, some Uruk-hai Infantry, some Nazkai, some Berserkers, which are obviously going to be useful if they can get in there, but again, fairly vulnerable to missiles. Uruk-hai Crossbows and Uruk-hai Archers. So again, quite a lot of sort of standard fare Uruk-hai with some elites around it. Not a huge army though in terms of its numbers. Over here though, we have the Mark of the Knight, who's playing as Rhun. He's got some Gamp Rim, he's got some Flag Rim, so again, lots of AP that Rhun can bring. Some Scion Rim also. Carmel's Shadow Guard with more AP. Carmel's Chosen, some Eastron Crossbowmen, quite a few Eastron Crossbowmen actually, some Narib. He's got for the Dragon's Breath, which obviously is not as disgustingly overpowered as it used to be, which is perhaps why you don't see it in every single game Rhun are in anymore. But it can still be very useful on a match like this. So let's see how it's used. I mean, if we can get into a good position and start shooting through big defensive blocks, could be a real boon for the attackers. And some Gamp Rim. So again, much like the Isengard armies, Rhun are very capable of putting out a nice, finely balanced army with lots of sort of their mid to high tier Loke units. So yeah, I think over here, two reasonably balanced armies. But we'll see. I think honestly, like, composition wise, there's not as many numbers as there usually is, which could play right into the hands of the defenders as long as they build their defences correctly. We have Master Blaster, who's playing as Dol Amroth. So Dol Amroth, of course, with the Peridil Riders moving out. Not sure how useful a unit of Horse Archers is going to be on a map like this, to be honest with you, because they're going to have to get out of the settlement really quickly, and Isengard are right there. They're going to have crossbows, which are going to be able to mow down Peridil Riders very quickly. Having said that, it is a way to sort of use up some crossbow bolts quickly, but it's a rather expensive way to achieve that end. So again, not so sure about that pick, to be honest. First Legion Pikes, however, from Aldance. Definitely the sort of thing I can get behind. Armour-piercing phalanx with the range of pikes, with the armour and stats that a high-tier dwarf unit provides. Really, really strong. Arguably the single best pike unit in the game, especially against forces like Isengard and Mordor. Even Rhun, to be honest with you, to a slightly lesser extent. Over here, actually, on the defence, is where we're going to see a more numbers-focused approach by the looks of things, at least from the Dol Amroth player, as he's gone for several units of DURIN Ernil Swordsmen. This will allow them to get a lot of men in the way of the advance, obviously in and around some of the more elite dwarven units, which I actually kind of like this idea, to be honest with you. It allows them to spend money elsewhere, but obviously individually they're not really going to be up to much. Like stuff like Uruk-hai Infantry and Flag Rim are going to easily be able to dispose of them. Ethelon Halberdiers, so an armour-piercing phalanx as well, going to be quite useful. Khazad-Dum Reclaimers with their axe throwers, again another really, really strong unit. Some sentries of Khazad-Dum from Joey Wan Kenobi, so two Khazad-Dum armies back here. So lots of sentries, some Sons of the Fallen, some Khazad-Dum Reclaimers, lots of Reclaimers actually on the defence, some Mithril Guard. The Iron Watch of Miramir, especially in a map like this, are really, really effective, which again is part of the reason why you need the numbers focus to try and absorb or sort of, just take the casualties that the Iron Watch are going to be able to dish out without it crippling your ability to win the battle. 2 units of Hammers of Gundabad, some Sons of the Fallen. Lots of Sons of the Fallen, in fact, from both Khazad-Dum players. Some upgraded 4th Legion Shield Guard to assist as well, so lots of spears, good for holding the line, but not necessarily the best at dealing damage. Warriors of Khazad-Dum, upgraded 2nd Legion Axe Guard, however, will be very good at dealing damage with the AP that they have available to them. Back in here, we've got a couple of units of Black Swan Renegades, a couple of units of Dismounted Knights to Silver Swan, some Peridil Champions, and some Haven Guard. So pretty much all of the Dol Amroth heavy hitters are back here in the final line of defence. Lots of AP and also heavy swordsmen there, so a nice varied force. Orc Hunters, a Catapult, some Orc Hunters of Khazad-Dum, more Mithril Guard, some Guards of Khazad-Dum, some Tirith Marksmen over here, more Dol Amroth forces as well. The upgraded Ethelond Men-at-Arms are here, as well as some upgraded DURIN and Pikeman across the bridge of Khazad-Dum. We see more of the Khazad-Dum forces, sentries, hammers, lots of hammers of Gundabad in fact, and some DURIN and Pikemen as well. And actually there is a single unit over here of Legion Bodyguard, which probably needs to fall back because otherwise they're going to get overwhelmed all on their lonesome. Now I will make a little bit of a cut here, because I would imagine that the attackers are probably going to wait until all of their armies are sort of gathered in front of their respective gates before moving in. If not, then this will be a shortcut indeed, but we shall see. So yeah, I'll make a cut and we'll rejoin when the gates are being battered down. So the gates have fallen, and Isengard are starting to filter in here with their Dunlending clansmen and their Snaga skirmishers. I'm very interested to see that the Legion Bodyguard are still just hanging out here. I mean, those Snaga skirmishers can definitely count the Legion Bodyguard as being a very worthwhile target, if they so choose, but there are going to be some arrows coming from the other side of the chasm from something. I imagine that's Orc Hunters actually. So in come the Hammers of Gundabad, in come the Javelins as well. Yeah, about time that those Legion Bodyguards started moving. They really don't want to be taking too much in the way of Javelins here, because losing elite units to very low tier Javelins is a good way to start off on exactly the wrong foot, but they're committing forward in a big way here, and these Isengard forces are going to very, very quickly fall apart. There's no way a single unit of Dunlending clansmen, even with Snaga skirmisher support, are going to be able to withstand the Hammers of Gundabad and the pikes that are coming in. So a big counter push here actually. I think Isengard may be expecting the dwarves to just sort of go back and sit in their defensive shell. Not going to be the case here with the Hammers of Gundabad on the way forwards. Orc Fodder also moving in. I mean, yeah, Orc Fodder is not really the heroes on this front line that I'm sure the Dunlending clansmen were hoping for, because these are some serious dwarven units that are moving in. Hammers and the Legion, especially the pikes, just here to shore things up. And the Snaga, I mean, they will be able to get some decent volleys off, but they're not going to be able to stay here for too much longer. Amazingly, the Dunlending clansmen are actually steady, which does surprise me quite a lot, to be honest with you. Meanwhile, over here, starting to filter in now the Isengard army over on the other side of things, which Master Blaster completely taking his eye off the ball there. Very, very disappointing, because those Perithil Riders are going to be slaughtered to the last man with those pikes moving in. And yeah, I mean, I thought the Perithil Riders were going to be a waste for quite a different reason, to be honest with you. But yeah, I mean, on Moria especially, you really have no excuse at all to be losing units in this way, because there's so little to be keeping an eye on, that if you end up losing units in this manner, it's very poor form, to be honest with you, and he realised that far, far too late. Very, very poor. Meanwhile, over on this side, Snaga skirmishers have now been engaged in melee. Things going slightly better for the defenders over here, because I think the attackers, they will very quickly need to start committing some of those elites that they have in their army. Because even if Isengard come forward with Uruk-hai infantry and the like, it's not going to help them too much, because Hammers of Gundabad are going to be really well suited to fighting Uruk-hai infantry. In come the Javelins, and they're getting some decent hits with the Orc Javelins. I mean, this is a good opportunity, I suppose, to try and use some of these lower end Javelins, but I mean, they're going to lose a lot of their strength in melee like this. Maybe something like the Orc Maulers wouldn't be too bad of a unit here, because they will at least give something in return, some kind of damage. But yeah, this is where I think the compositions, honestly, of the attackers over on this side may very well start to hurt them, because they're going to be able to do so little damage to the defensive lines with their lower tier units, of which there isn't enough of them, and then very, very quickly they're going to find themselves having to commit their elite units, and by that point it may very well be a case of all of the ammunition they have in their Khazad-Dum reclaimers could be used and brought to bear on slightly more impressive units. Again, over here, a little bit, this defensive line isn't built terribly well, because the First Legion pikes are sticking out in front of the Doran Urnil swordsmen rather than it being the other way around. You want the Doran Urnil swordsmen in front to take any missiles that come in, not have the First Legion be the ones taking the hits for the Doran Urnil swordsmen. Completely the wrong way around. So again, the defenders, I think, have got every, composition wise, I think they should have the edge here, to be honest with you, and it's rare that I think that the defenders in a 3v5 have the edge going into a battle, but I think they do here, so I'd be quite disappointed if the defenders go on to squander the opportunity they have. I mean, to be fair, Aldance over here is taking advantage of the units that he has, because certainly the attackers over here have done a pretty poor job so far. Yeah, you can see more javelins coming in as well. And this orc fodder is not going to last too much longer, and then those orc javelins will be engaged in melee. Although I will say that the hammers of Gundabad are lagging behind just a little bit. Sentries of Khazad-Dum continuing to push forward. Yeah, more fodder. This is the problem. Like, I can already see an issue here that the attackers, they're trying to save their elites from a very early stage, and the one advantage really to having all the elites that Proxima Centuri and Bilbo T. Baggins have brought in their armies is the fact that you can commit some in the early stages of the match and not be too concerned about it, but they're trying to save them, and I think that will ultimately end up being their demise. To be honest with you, I think I wouldn't be using the Iron Watch at this stage either. I mean, this is just fodder and javelins that they're firing into. Really quite unnecessary, but I mean, a single volley isn't going to hurt too much. I mean, it will just obviously hasten the demise of these low tier orcs that are in front. I think they are in range of the troll drummers, which is perhaps why these units are not routing quite so quickly, but these sentries, of course, are going to be able to just continue to push forward with their pikes, continue to do the business. And if need be, they can always commit the 2 units of hammers and the Legion Bodyguard in there to do some damage as well. And also some Dol Amroth units just in behind. Meanwhile, over on this side of things, still, the army is not quite laid out correctly, and there are Uruk-hai archers firing into them. So, I mean, to be fair, like, they do have a bit of a shield value. They have really high armor as well because they are dwarves. But I mean, this is still not the way you want to be losing some of your first legion if you can help it. Having the militia in front with their shields raised would be the way to go. And in comes the Dragon Breath. So this is where, as the defenders, you really need to be paying attention to what the attackers are doing. You can't just sort of set up your lines and then go to sleep, essentially. Because the attacks are going to sort of dynamically change what they're doing, and you need to also change what you're doing to respond to that. Speaking of which, moving forward in a bit more numbers now. Big Butt Cheeks coming forward with his Uruk-hai infantry. But I like this from Aldance. He's probably the only player so far that I've been universally impressed with, to be honest with you. Because he is now responding to the Uruk-hai infantry moving forward with the hammers of Gundabad. I mean, yes, it's a basic thing to do, but so far, none of the other players have really shown themselves to be doing that. Rhun seems to be putting his artillery into a good position, but we'll have to wait and see what happens with that. Orc javelins getting engaged in melee again. This is kind of sloppy. And once again, now the Uruk-hai infantry are actually pulling back out. They don't fancy the fight against the hammers of Gundabad, nor should they. But I mean, they're not going to be going anywhere, so I mean, I don't understand really what they intend to do. Is that the catapult that's firing? Something fired there. I mean, the Iron Watch and Mirror are on the way forward. I don't really see the point of using one of your most prized assets at this point in time when you're managing perfectly well without it at this point in time. Proxima Centuri trying to use his own orc javelins as well. But Bilbo T. Baggins' javelins are going to get absolutely destroyed. Pulling back these 52 remaining pikemen who have worked hard on that front line, they've probably racked up a very impressive kill count for themselves, as the dwarves have just easily turned back the low tier units that Isengard and Mordor have thrown forwards. Meanwhile, what happened here? Looks like a little bit of an engagement that we missed in short order. What happened to that artillery? Where are we? The artillery has been moved out of harm's way, so they did commit some units in. In come the Eastron crossmen. Now this is something to be taken a little bit more seriously, but one thing that the defenders can of course do is just sit either side of this opening, so that the crossbows can't shoot right up the pipe. Be interesting to see what unit they actually go for as well, because the Doran swordsmen are in front, but they're not really the sort of unit worth going after with highly valuable crossbow bolts, because you can more easily deal with them in melee. Whereas something like the halberdiers, or especially the First Legion pikes, would make for a prime target indeed for Rhun. So definitely a game of cat and mouse over on this side, whereas over here, as we head down the mountain, some Orc Javelins still firing away. There's still the Temple Executioners and Uruk Captains in there, and now honestly might be the time to consider committing one of these units into the melee fight. I mean, between the two Mordor armies over here, they have plenty of them. The Uruk Captains in particular, with that little bit of AP that they offer, pushing them in with a host of Uruk-hai, backing them up, potentially some Uruk-hai pikes as well, because at this point they're actually far enough away from range support that pikes would not go amiss. That might be the answer here to getting through these hammers of Gundabad, because so far they've just been cracking Uruk-hai skulls, and the attackers really don't have much to show for it at this point. And the Hammers of Gundabad, of course, let's not forget, are locked morale. And a locked morale unit like this is going to sit and fight for as long as it takes. You're not going to be able to break their spirit. Javelins are thudding into the Legion Bodyguard and the sentries of Khazad-Dum back here. Yeah, that's not great, but I mean, it's also not doing a huge amount of damage either. It could be worse, but I mean, honestly, when that's the case, like, you may as well put your units either side of this gate over here. Just make sure that they can't be targeted in quite such an easy fashion. Meanwhile, I don't know whether it's meant to be brass or gold. I would assume it's like a brass armour that these Hammers of Gundabad have, or bronze. Definitely gives them a very distinctive look among their brethren. Yeah, these Uruk-hai infantry really, really struggling. They're obviously on the wrong end of that sort of crescent moon engagement. They're getting sort of partially surrounded, which is always bad anyway, regardless. But they're also up against the kind of unit that they're really not going to enjoy fighting at all. So, such as it is. Well, yeah, these crossbows, I mean, they're doing a lot of damage here. And I have to say, like, Master Blaster is a player that probably knows better. I mean, it's not so bad to lose DURIN or Swordsman, but Ethelon Halberd is the sort of unit which can come in really handy later on. And they're just kind of stood here. It really doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And again, like the Dwarven player as well, Aldance has done really well on the other side, but he needs to keep track of what's going on over here as well. The First Legion is such a key unit when you're on the defence like this, and he is moving them away. So once again, he's proving himself to be the most impressive of the defenders, and that's weird because I know how much of the game Master Blaster has played. Seems to be quite off the pace today, I have to say, in this battle. Khazad-Dum Reclaimers. Potentially going to roll forward here, and I don't really know, like, would I move them forward? I probably wouldn't, to be honest with you. These strong crossmen are going to target them down pretty quickly. And there's no sense in using Khazad-Dum Reclaimer ammunition on each strong crossman. They're so garbage in melee. Just use a unit of archers. That is one thing I have noticed actually about the defenders on this occasion. They haven't got that many archers, which is a shame. And that may actually be a very significant problem for them, because they could really be taking advantage of that. A few misses there from the Khazad-Dum Reclaimers as well. And now they're going to get teed off on here as well. This is not a good move from Aldance, I have to say. He's done quite well up to this point, but this is not a particularly well thought out idea. Even if they end up getting some good kills onto the Eastron Crossbowmen, it's not a good use of the Khazad-Dum Axe Throwers ammunition. They'd be very fortunate to win a skirmish fight like this. They're going to get absolutely dunked on, to be honest with you. So as poorly as it's gone for the attackers over here, over on the other side, mainly due to calamities from the defenders actually, it's going alright. Again, it's only basic probing that's happening over there, and to be honest with you, the defenders are not responding very well to it. Meanwhile, Uruk-hai infantry on the way in. Again, Uruk-hai infantry are getting absolutely massacred in droves. When that's happening, maybe the solution is not simply another unit of Uruk-hai infantry. Maybe some elites are necessary. And I wouldn't send in trolls against the Hammers of Gundabad either, because the Hammers of Gundabad will be really good against stuff like the Olag-hai or the Trolls of the White Hand. Big AP values, locked morale. Definitely going to need like an elite unit of infantry combined with pikes, I think, here, to get rid of the Hammers as they move in. Balance of forces evenly matched. That may just be because of sheer numbers. Like the Hammers are, of course, taking attritional casualties as they do this, but I would still back them, honestly. That AP that they've got, and still not going all that well. Meanwhile, over here, I bet, yep, they're still out here, still just taking it. Don't agree with that at all. There's a reason why on Moria very often you see the defenders take cover behind the two sides over here, and that's because of waste like this. Like, what do the defenders really have to show for their efforts over here? A handful of dead Eastron crossbowmen, whereas the attackers have managed to do a lot more. And it's only basic probing that Isengard and Rhun have really done over here. But as soon as they are softened up sufficiently, Isengard and Rhun may very well fancy their chances with all of the AP and supporting tools that they have. We shall see. Meanwhile, back over here, Isengard still have a lot of reinforcements, but not a lot of Uruk-hai infantry anymore. Only the one unit remains. Other than that, we've got Moran on Halberds, we've got Orc Maulers, a lot of more fragile units. A lot of their javelins have also been used at this point. I can't really say too much that's flattering about either side at this point. Because, I mean, the attackers have not really over here committed units in the right order. But at the same time, the defenders, they've done it over on the other side, and now they're going to be doing it over here as well. They're just stood right in front of javelins and arm-piercing arrows, and they're doing nothing. They're just sat there taking it. Like, what on earth is this? Even a newer player knows that this is not what you should be doing. I'm sorry. There's nothing I can do to sugarcoat this. It is dreadful. Finally he's moving back, but I mean, it's happening over here as well. Very, very poor, I have to say, and it kind of makes me want the defenders to lose, if I'm being honest. But then I also want the attackers to lose, because I think they built their armies incorrectly. And they too have not really performed all that well, especially over on this side so far. I think their choices of units to commit in the numbers that they have, in the way that they have, has also been almost completely wrong, so I don't know. There are certain players in this match as well that have played the game enough before to know that these are not the ways to approach things. And again, he's moved backwards, but he's still perfectly in range of the Temple Guard. So I don't really understand what he's hoping to accomplish. It's going to be one of those battles, isn't it, where I'm constantly having to point out issues, basic issues. Like, I don't mind when it's something which a newer player wouldn't know, but any player who's played any sort of Total War knows that you don't want to park your units right in front of enemy sort of ranged units and just let them get shot. In come the Uruk-hai infantry. They've already taken a bit of a beating. They're going to need some support, and they're finally going to get it from Mordor, at least in more substantial terms than fodder. A few units of Orc Maulers, of course, are going to be able to add that little bit of AP, which may just give that little bit more progress into the settlement. The dwarves are now moving backwards. I mean, to be fair, the attackers haven't really managed to get through a handful of dwarven units at this stage. Again, it's very bizarre patterns of commitment now. And actually, it turns out Mordor are not going to support Isengard's Uruk-hai infantry. They are instead going to... They were going to, and then they retreated. I don't know why I'm surprised with how this battle has gone so far. In comes the Uruk-hai infantry. They're of course going to get absolutely slaughtered by the Legion bodyguard. In come the trolls. I mean, the Hammers of Gundabad took such a savaging at the hands of the Temple Guard and the Javelins that at this point this might not be enough to kill off the Olak-hai. I mean, with the Legion bodyguard there, to be honest with you, it probably still will be. The Olak-hai are going to need some support. I mean, if they push in here with a lot of Orc Maulers as well, like, this could be exactly what the attackers need to overrun this defence finally and start getting at the slightly softer and easier to deal with Dol Amroth units. They are going to need more support. And not Snaga skirmishers, because they're not going to be able to get into a position where they can effectively use their jabbies. We'll have to wait and see there. Meanwhile, finally a bit of a melee engagement happening over here. Uruk-hai Pikeman, which actually are the ideal target for Khazad-Dum reclaimers. And once again, in very typical fashion for this game so far, we see units get committed, and then they get cold feet and run away again. All the while taking those dwarven throwing axes to the back, which will do a decent amount of damage there, leaving a trail of half-orc and Uruk-hai corpses in its wake. Some misses there as well, but indecisive so far. The attackers, I mean, to be fair over here, the attackers never really needed to commit, if I'm being honest. The attackers can get away with just slowly softening the enemy up because they're not moving out the way of those crossbow bolts. And that means that you can really get your money's worth from them. And then, when a lot of their supporting tools are gone, move forward in a big way and smash this defence to splinters. I do think the attackers over on this side have done probably the best job of any team on the field so far. We're finally seeing a bit more movement. Whatever happened to the Olak-hai? Were they killed that quickly? It looks like they were, actually. So I mean, it goes to show how strong a combination of Legion Bodyguard and Hammers of Gundabad can be. But having said that, there's not much of that defence left, is there? Something's firing. Not the Tirithea Marksman though, it is Ironwatch of Miramir are getting ready to fire. What are they firing at? I mean, they're firing at Orc Javelins again. Like, it's a highly... Well, I mean, there's Temple Guard in here as well. Temple Guard, not the worst target in the world. Any other units you get can be good collateral damage. Orc Javelins getting ready to fire. Are they going to fire into this defensive line? Again, over here, it's bizarre. Master Blaster has played the game enough to know that you put your shielded infantry in front of your pikes. Not the other way around. It's very strange to see him play like this. Not very good. Not that it really matters against Javelins, because they're going to be able to do damage regardless of if it's a shielded unit or not. But still. Very strange indeed. One of the Legion bodyguards is still trying to get away from here. Oof, he just hacked down those Javelins there. Any swing of his axe is going to result in a kill there. 3 swings and 3 kills. As you would expect against a very low tier unit such as that. Temple Guard are trying to fire. Some returning salvos, but they don't want to be bogged down in a skirmish fight, the Temple Guard. They want to be firing against enemy infantry if they can, because those armor-piercing arrows are so useful. What are they actually firing at? They're going after the Iron Watcher Miramir, actually, so that is a good target, to be fair to Bilbo. Going after the right kind of unit, Javelins. Throwing their payload from on high, killing off several of those DURIN Pikemen. In comes the Catapult. Enough to cause the Orc Javelins to waver, actually, in conjunction with the arrow fire that's coming at them. It is actually firing at them. So yeah, it is the Orc Hunters of Khazad-Dum here at the top of the hill. Again, still, they're eager to skirmish over here. They haven't gone about it in quite as comprehensive a fashion as the attackers over on the other side. Speaking of which, what is actually happening over here? Still a whole lot of nothing, as the attackers are well within their right to do this, just slowly chip away. And they have done, to be fair, a lot of damage to these Khazad-Dum reclaimers who have been used in highly questionable ways, as I've already said. Throwing axes being utilised. I mean, yeah, they're going to do damage here. Like you can see, there's a lot of dead Eastron crossmen. There's going to be some dead Uruk-hai crossmen as well. But Khazad-Dum reclaimers are far too useful for dealing with stuff like Uruk-hai pikemen and Gamp Rhun to be used in this way. Just my two penny worth there. Again, it's been a bizarre game so far, a game in which I think neither side has played particularly well, so it may end up being one side bumbling their way to victory more than anything else. I think we've seen individual little bits of good ideas. We shall have to see. You're not going to rout the Temple Guard, to be fair, you're just going to do damage to them. I mean, you will cut down their DPS, but they're still going to have the same amount of arrows, ultimately, if you leave them be. If you allow them to expend their entire ammunition supply. Orc Javelins moving in, causing the pike formation, to be honest with you, to go a little bit haywire. But the Orc Javelins are going to be easily dealt with, to be honest with you, by the men of Dol Amroth. In comes some more Orc Javelins, who may be out of ammunition. And if they are, committing them to melee is all well and good, but you're not going to achieve anything unless you they're best used, like, units that you don't expect to really offer anything in terms of their own abilities are only best used really when they're acting as a meat shield to something better. If you just send them in on their own, they're not going to do anything. And again, Proxima Centuri is a player who has played the game before. He should know this. But apparently not. Let's see. Aha. So they did try to get in here, perhaps to get a better shot with their crossbows, but they got a little bit too greedy, and this did allow the defenders to close in, but the defenders are going to need a little bit more on the front line to actually win this fight, because these units are so depleted at this point that they are going to be overwhelmed by the crossbowman in melee. Defeat seems certain for what remains of the Athlon Halberdiers and the DURIN swordsmen. The Carmel's Chosen marching forward. In come the Bane Guard as well, which is not the worst commitment of a unit. Nice AP values there. The Carmel's Chosen in particular mean that effectively, if the defenders want this to work, they can't afford to mess around anymore, because with a unit as tanky as the Carmel's Chosen on the front line, you're not going to be able to get rid of them with just anything. Especially with crossbow support in close order. Again, I don't understand why the 1st Legion Pikes have been committed here. Either send them in or get them back into a defensive shape with these other units. As it is, they're just going to be effectively wasted. There are the Carmel's Chosen. Defeat seems certain. Only a military genius could win this battle. There are the Reclaimers. Again, just sort of stood there. If they're out of ammunition again, either commit them or pull them back. Doing neither is not going to help you at all. There's 6 Khazad-Dum Reclaimers here who are going to get overwhelmed by some overlapping half-orc Vaneguard. Here we go, Khazad-Dum Reclaimers are now moving backwards. Or are they? I mean, they could get into the crossbowmen here and prevent them from moving forward, and of course that's what the Mark of the Knight was waiting for, and he's going to charge forward with his Carmel's Chosen to shut that door in their face. And they will be able to overwhelm. I mean, with the AP that the Reclaimers have, I mean, it's not ideal for the Carmel's Chosen. But, numbers-wise, they're easily going to be able to overwhelm them at this stage. DURIN Swordsman, not exactly what's called for. I mean, at this point you should cut your losses and perhaps move back to a better defensive position. If you were going to move in with reinforcements, it should have been done far quicker than this. Meanwhile, over here, slowly but surely dribbling more units in, but again, it's not really going to work out in their favour, I don't think. Oh, excuse me. Orc Javelins continuing to get devastated by a combination of Dwarven and Amrothian Pikeman. Not sure if Amrothian is the right way to put it, but still. And again, smaller sections of the army continuing to be committed forward here as the Orc Maulers try to rush their way to the front line. AP will be useful, but in the numbers that they're being committed, again, just single units at a time, being committed in a single file fashion. And I do think if this keeps up, the defenders should be able to wear them down, just again through sheer quality if nothing else. When some of the heavy hitting Dwarven units start getting involved, like the Mithril Guard and Guards of Khazad-Dum, like this is not going to be the way to deal with them at all. Amroth still have their elites waiting in the town centre as well, Haven Guard, heavy swordsmen and macemen of all descriptions, which will be really useful later on. Temple Guard presumably out of ammunition. Their commitment to the front line is all well and good, and they should do a decent job against warriors of Khazad-Dum, certainly. They are putting themselves fully in the view of any support they may have as well up on the high ground. We'll have to wait and see, but so far I think the defenders can afford to be fairly pleased with how things have gone over here. Less so over on this side, like they're continuing to commit forward. First Legion are finally being committed, so they're at least not going to be horrendously wasted any longer. And this might prove to be a bit of a problem for the attackers, honestly. With First Legion, with more Amroth reinforcements on the way forward, they may need to commit something else just to make sure of their situation. What's going on over here? Sons of the Fallen. Parathil Riders are back over here. Those Sons of the Fallen are taking the damage from the crossbows. I mean, they are in a position to be shot, so why not? You may also end up getting those 2 archers, mounted archers, to boot. Very interesting. Uruk-hai moving forward. Oh, excuse me. Be strong crossbowmen winding up. And then we'll continue to shoot into those Sons of the Fallen. Again, a good unit to get rid of because they're so difficult to batter your way through the Sons of the Fallen. In terms of sheer numbers here, though, I think the First Legion Pikes have taken too much damage already to really tilt this fight in the favour of the defenders, actually, so maybe some more would be needed. And of course, most of the units they're fighting alongside a DURIN Swordsman, the Amroth Militia. Yeah, and the way the defence has been handled over here has been much sloppier, I would say. They've allowed far too many of the attacking skirmishers to get good value for money. E-strong crossbows are not overly expensive either, so never a good sign when you see that sort of thing. Sons of the Fallen will easily be able to withstand a few volleys from Uruk-hai archers, though. Crossbows are a bit different, of course, because they can punch through shields and armour to a greater extent than arrows can, especially low-quality arrows, like the Uruk-hai archers traffic in. Blackguard of Barad-dûr are trying to push forward, but there's nothing following them up, which, I mean, when you push forward with a great shield infantry like this, the main purpose is so you can follow through with a lot of units as well to really consolidate your gains. That's not going to be the case here, though. They've pushed through. They've gotten quite a long way as well. They've gotten all the way across the bridge of Khazad-Dum, in fact, to the next defensive line Amroth have set up of men-at-arms and pikes. But, I mean, I imagine they've just broken, and indeed they have. They've got no support, nothing following them up, and again, if these Legion bodyguards so choose, they can patch up the hole that was made by the the Blackguard if they want. Moran on Halberds coming in from Proxima Century. I mean, this defence is on the verge of falling apart at this point. Adding that arm-piercing phalanx to it will probably only hasten that, but I mean, it is a good target, honestly. This is a good target for the Iron Watch to go after, because they're so clustered together. Even if it is lower quality units, you can really do some damage to the numbers that the attackers are bringing to bear here. Here come the Olag High. Uruk captains are now coming forward, so this is more of a serious commitment from the attackers, finally. Uruk High pikes are also rolling in. We're more or less at the halfway point of the battle as well. And so far, I'm not really sure what to make of it. I would say the attackers maybe have the edge just because they do have more disposable units than the defenders, and the defence over on the other side has gone so poorly for the defenders that any gains they will have made over here, I think, will be wiped out. Iron Watch continuing to fire. Bit of friendly fire, unfortunately, as well. Like, there is a bit of collateral damage when you use the Iron Watch at Pyramia, and that will probably be enough, honestly, to break this front line. So if they're going to have a few more volleys, they need to make quick use of them, which they are doing, to be fair. Good damage. Meanwhile, over here, crossbows continuing to do some good stuff. They're having to arc their shots a bit, which is not ideal, but they've already managed to get such a good amount of value. Another unit of Athlon Halberdiers is on the front line again. AP, very useful, but there's so many Uruk-hai that they're faced with that I don't think they're going to be able to hold on for too much longer, to be honest with you. Oh, excuse me. Khazad-Dum Reclaimers, DURIN Ernil Swordsman. And there are the strong crossbowmen. Let's see here. Yeah, and also another problem is going to be the Uruk-hai Pikemen as well. Obviously, they're going to be able to outrange the Athlon Halberdiers. So not only are they thoroughly outnumbered, but also they have the range disadvantage here. The Dol Amroth Halberdiers. Yeah, the attackers over on this side have done a good job. I would say that both the Isengard and Runic player can afford to be pretty pleased with their efforts so far, especially seeing as they're heavy hitters back here, the Nazkai, Trolls, Berserkers, and also all of the sort of main body of the Runic army can be committed later as well, so they've definitely got enough left in the tank to keep this attack going. And it's weird as well, because this is obviously the side where only 2 armies are on, rather than the side where 3 are. And there you can see some fire arrows spewing forth, the catapult also firing in. I mean, they've got a golden opportunity here to do a lot of damage actually to the attackers. Fire arrows being shot, catapults going to be able to do some damage. Yeah, good hits there on the bridge. Orc maulers broken, over 100 men running in the other direction now, using the orcs' poor morale against them. Obviously, if the troll drummers were over here, it'd be a little bit more difficult to rout them, but I think with that level of devastation, fire arrows, flaming ammunition from the artillery, overextending slightly into a defending line, I think even the troll drummers probably would have had their job. Had a hard job having to keep those orc maulers in line as they continue to filter across, but they're in, again, nowhere near enough numbers. This is the sort of thing that newer players will do, and I know Bilbo T. Baggins is a slightly newer player, so perhaps him approaching the game in this way is understandable, but the worst thing I think you can do when you're on the attack in a siege is to half-ass things. To commit, but not commit enough, effectively. Like, you'd be better off doing nothing at all. You'd be better off taking it really slow and trying to really slowly wear the enemy down with your skirmishers and playing it that way than doing what they're doing on the other side, which is not committing enough, but still committing. Like, if you're going to do that, you need to commit in numbers. Yes, you're going to take damage from Iron Watch and from the catapult, but doing it in that way is probably the worst way they can handle things, to be honest with you, because they're going to run out of manpower sooner or later, and then they're going to have nothing against the elites over there. Fortunately for them, the defenders may have to shift their focus to this side over here, because I think Isengard and Rhun have done a very decent job so far. The crossbows have softened the enemy up, and now they've got them right where they want them in melee, with their pikes able to do a good job. That is a little bit unfortunate. There you can see the Dragon's Breath firing into the roof of the gate. If they're going to be able to use the Dragon's Breath, they need to get it within the fortress. They can't afford to be too stingy with it. The defenders continuing to want to hold on to this outer choke point though. Sons of the Fallen moving forward in formation. I mean, that will be enough, honestly, to hold them back for a little bit longer. Mordor and Ernil Swordsman are also committed, but again, they're little more than a meat shield at this point, to be honest with you. There we go. And again, they're just sort of moving in and they're just sort of sitting here. Like, they need to be in. If you're going to commit them in now. Like, you're barely holding on. Like, those pikes are really giving you the business. Oof, that was a hit. They do manage to hit centre mass, killing off some 2nd Legion Axe Guard and some sentries of Khazad-Dum. So they do manage to thread the needle in the end. Meanwhile, over here, they have made more ground over on this side, to be fair, the attackers, but they've also taken far more in the way of losses doing it. These Uruk captains have been committed forward, but they're going to get... I think the Iron Watch might be out of ammunition now because they're being committed to melee, of course. They are still a multiple HP unit, so if nothing else, they're going to be a big armoured brick right in the way of the attackers, albeit the Uruk captains are AP, but it's not really going to help them out too much. Arrows being shot into the Uruk-hai pikemen as they try to shimmy to the high ground over here, taking losses all the while. Turithea marksmen doing a good job of trying to target them down, so they will be depleted. And to be fair, the defenders have got nothing up here, so this is pretty much a clear run to the town centre, albeit one unit of pikes is not going to be enough to deal with the Dol Amroth defenders that have been laid on. Lots of heavy swordsmen. Meanwhile, over on this side of things, some 2nd Legion Axe Guard ready to move in if need be, and they do need to. I mean, I do think the way the defenders have approached this particular choke point over here has been not very good. Like, I'm struggling to think of things that they've done right over here, to be honest with you. They took a really bad skirmish fight, the Khazad-Dum reclaimers, against all those crossbowmen. They've left elite units way out in the open. Like, again, this is a good example of someone committing units close to a fight, but not really having them in. Not what you want to be doing at all. Like, you either need to commit fully, or pull back from this situation. And unfortunately, the defenders have done neither. And because both sides have really made mistakes like this, for the defenders, it's amplified. And it's one of the reasons why I think the attackers will probably go on to win this battle in the end. See, these 2nd Legion are committing themselves from Joey 1 Kenobi. Aldance has been the one that has been guilty of doing this sort of thing, to be honest with you. For someone who did quite well early on, to be honest with you. Things have not progressed in the way that he would have liked. I do not think. Meanwhile, they are actually pushing the Orcs back across the bridge at this point. Iron Watch of Miramir in the vanguard. That is a lot of Orc maulers they're going to have to deal with, though, and it's something they will not be successful in doing, I don't think. Probably a good target to actually shoot with archers, to be honest with you. Even with their armour upgrade, after all, you can cut through them pretty quickly. The attackers still have a lot left. I mean, we've seen, you know, they will still have a fair amount. Oof, that's unfortunate. They actually, the way that the catapults are lined up here, they're actually going to be destroying their own artillery pieces, which is not great for them. Guards of Khazad-Dum pulling back. Centre mass into those Orc maulers. Yep, they're wasting their ammunition here. And again, based on how Aldance has played, I imagine he's not going to notice until almost all of his ammunition has been expended. Again, another example of not paying attention. Or 2nd Legion Axe Guard on the front line, and actually victory. Now that the Sons of the Fallen have effectively, they've been pushed into, like, they didn't move with the 2nd Legion, but I don't think this is going to go too well for them. There are Berserkers on the front line, there are still Pikes, there's all the reinforcements they could need, some Narim getting into position. If they do commit any more reinforcements forward, they're going to be shot by the Narim on the approach, which, depending on the unit, could be devastating. It could be little more than an annoyance. But I think finally the Dwarves have sort of got the idea that, listen, we don't want to commit to that fight anymore. Whatever those units get in terms of kills, that's fine. We need to move backwards. He needs to do the same with his pikemen here as well. Perhaps fall back to the TC and call it a day. It is still going to be costly for the attackers to get through here, because Sons of the Fallen and 2nd Legion Axe Guard with that armour upgrade are effective units. But with Berserkers, they definitely have all they need, I think, to be doing the business. Let's see what's going on over here, shall we? Yep, he's completely blind to this. That's not good. Meanwhile, Iron Watch still holding on in this fight. And actually they are slowly but surely gaining the upper hand on this one unit of Orc Maulers. Another unit of Orc Maulers into the settlement as well. Trolls the White Hand going up this way. I mean, I think the Pikes, yes, they did. Well, I mean, this is a fairly decent force, actually, that Isengard have ended up sending this way. Unfortunately for them, however, Havengard and Perithal champions going to be able to defeat Uruk Country. The presence of those Pikes might make things slightly more awkward for the Dol Amroth defenders here. They should be able to do a decent job here. And there are reinforcements if they are needed from Dol Amroth and from the Dwarves, but I don't think they're going to be necessary, to be honest with you. I think especially with the Havengard here, like, they're just going to be able to carve their way through. Very high damage. There goes the Isengard general over on that side of things. Surprising that that's the first general to fall, but it does also indicate that perhaps the Nazkai are on the front line, and I didn't see them. They do tend to blend in with the other units. And they have pretty much surrounded this Dwarven attack at this point. They've got some Uruk-hai pikemen in behind. What are they doing? Oof, bouncing. Hitting the priceless Dwarven architecture. I think they were actually going for the either the Reclaimers or the 2nd Legion Axe Guard there, but ended up just missing out on their opportunity to do that. We'll get a good shot on them. Sons of the Fallen. They will hold on for a long time, the Sons of the Fallen. But ultimately they will be dealt with. Surrounded as they are, albeit only very slightly surrounded. Not very many of them are preventing their retreat should they try to, but I think at this point they'd probably be better off just remaining in place, doing their thing. Orc Hunters of Khazad-Dum on the front line. Ironwatch of Miramir presumably forced out the way at this point. Orc Hunters, they do have those dual axes in melee, which can be used to pretty good effect. But against this number of orcs, I'm not quite so sure. Rangers doing their thing as well. Adunaim Shadow Bows carving through the Dol Amroth defenders and actually the Mithril Guard. I mean, from the front, the Mithril Guard, again, like, look at this, like decision making wise. Those Temple Guard, again, Proxima Centuri, a player that should know better. He's going after the Ethelon Men at Arms when the Mithril Guard are right there. Those are armour piercing arrows, one of the few things that something like the Mithril Guard probably will be pretty concerned with. They're 3 hit points, of course, the Mithril Guard, so very hard to wear down, but come on now, surely. Meanwhile, over here, Catapult has wasted probably all of its ammunition at this point, if we're being honest. Let's have a look over here. The Trolls have arrived on station, but as soon as the Trolls arrived, Master Blaster knew that he needed to commit something more, so he sent over the Black Swan Renegades as well to add their AP to the mix, and this means that this Isengard flanking force will be utterly overwhelmed and vanquished. Bit of a shame, because, I mean, there was an opening over here, but he perhaps should have waited for more reinforcements to arrive. Albeit that probably wouldn't have been sufficient either to get them through. I mean, it'll add a little bit of AP, but they needed to wait until they were attacking from all sides of the town centre before an attack like this would have been worth it, to be honest with you. Because now Dol Amroth can send all of their units that they have back here to overwhelm, and then they'll be able to put them back to the town centre when they're needed to be committed elsewhere. Sentries pulling back. Ooh, Trolls to the White Hand being committed over here as well. The final nail in the coffin for the Dwarven defenders that are still here. The Narim forcing their way through as well. A brave last stand from the defenders over here. But emphasis on last, because they will not be playing any further part in this battle, certainly. Caval's Shadow Guard in there helping to finish things off with their big AP values on those. Kind of more like halberds, to be honest with you, than axes, but they wield them in the same way as a heavy axeman would. Still some of them are in there, amazingly enough. There's one. Oh, he just got squashed by a troll, and that is going to be that. So now, this Isengard and Runic host can continue to move forwards, and potentially try and bail out their allies over on the other side. Try and make something happen, try and take some of the heat off them, because if they don't, could be a bit of a problem for them, although it could be as well the defenders just decide to pull back to the town centre at this point. Perhaps they feel as though they've done enough. Ethelon Men at Arms on the front line, some Legion Bodyguard are in there as well. But the Orc numbers on the bridge, AP damage coming their way, will it be enough? We shall see. Oof, a very fortuitous shot there into the Adunaim Shadow Bow, so finally Eldance, he didn't waste all of his ammunition, which is good. Decent hit there into the Adunaim Shadow Bows. More Orcs making their way in. Another unit of Blackguard of Barad-dûr, which could be so useful, but they need to be used in the correct way now at this point. Moran on Halberdiers as well. Orc Maulers coming in here as well. Still lots of Orc Maulers. I mean, there was a large concentration of them, which is not entirely the wrong way to go about things, especially considering how few archers they actually had on the defence here today, because they may be cheap and they may not be the best, but the AP they offer is just useful against the dwarves and old Amroth. Meanwhile, Easterlings marching in, looking very, very menacing. Scion Rim and Flag Rim. Combination of good solid AP line infantry and very survivable heavy spearmen, which will be useful because they're going to need a little bit of gumption to them as they try to take the town centre, because there's still very impressive units waiting in the wings, such as Guards of Khazad-Dum, Haven Guard, and some more Mithril Guard. Carmel's Shadow Bows will be very useful as well if they can get into the right position. Rangers trying to carve through that defence. 4th Legion Shield Guard. We'll see if the dwarves once again just sort of sit there and take the punishment coming their way, or if they try to retreat to a safer area, force the attackers into situations they don't want to be in. I saw that. Another good hit from the catapult, and in fact that is enough to break them, and back come the Mithril Guard, so perhaps sensing a bit of weakness here on the front line, they're going to try to continue to pressure and try to get rid of yet more of the attacking manpower, which will be important if they can really sort of defang the enemy over on this side of things, which is actually going to be fairly difficult because they still have enough units that they can at least be a good presence on the field today. Over here. Oh, Master Blaster, what have you done? I mean, they're committed in, but these are AP arrows. They're going to be thudding into the side of the Parathil champions. They need to shut down the Temple Guard very quickly, I think, which they should be able to do with these pikes, to be honest. Need to get in there pretty quickly, does Joey 1 Kenobi. He should be able to do just that, because, I mean, without that, it's going to be fairly difficult on the front line here, with the Guards of Khazad-Dum. Oh, he's just sort of sat there now. Again, bizarre choices from the defenders have been made today, and from the attacks. I mean, look at this. Look at this. There's a way around. A flanking position. I'm really confused as to why the defenders decided to try and counter-attack into this. They don't have enough. They really don't. Temple Executioners in melee. Those Temple Guard just absolutely teeing off into the sentries of Khazad-Dum. I thought they were going to move forward and engage in melee at the very least, but it seems I was mistaken. Guards of Khazad-Dum going to... Well, again, the Nazgûl are coming around. Honestly, I do think that... I think the attackers deserve to win this fight purely because I think that Isengard and Rhun over on that side of the settlement did a good job. No one else on the field today has particularly covered themselves in glory. Black Swan Renegades moving forward, but again, at this point, it was such a questionable decision to come out here, and I think it might be the final nail in the coffin, to be honest with you, for the defenders. What they will lose out here is going to be so substantial. 3 units of heavy swordsmen, Guards of Khazad-Dum, what will be the sentries of Khazad-Dum, and the Black Swan Renegades. And again, what is he doing? What is he doing? Master Blaster should know much better than this. He needs to get into the Temple Guard. I don't know whether he was like high or drunk or something when he was playing this game. Like, that is... he knows much better than that. That reeks of him throwing the game, to be honest with you. Very, very poor. Generals are dying. I think that was Imrahil. Meanwhile, 2nd Legion Axe Guard holding on their lonesome against the Gamprim and the Pikeman as they push forwards. We got back there. Reclaimers. Hammers, 2nd Legion. I mean, there's a lot of good units back here, but I've got no faith, honestly, that the defenders will use them effectively at this stage. It's been almost comical, some of the uses of units in this game so far. Temple Executions like this, like what? What is this? What is this meant to accomplish? What are they doing over here as well? I mean, the Mithril Guard are trying to sort of get in behind the rear, but I mean, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. Like, they're just going to be overwhelmed up here. The Blacksworn Renegades are retreating. They're retreating with their units that are so depleted, but they're using units which aren't depleted to shield them on the retreat. The Dismounted Knights and Silver Swan. It's been the worst that I've seen Master Blaster play. The worst, by a long way. Terrible. Absolutely shocking. And now he's coming back for more. Shot by Uruk-hai crossmen as well. It's almost like a wounded animal that you just need to put out of their misery at this point. Just deal with Dol Amroth as quickly as you can, because we've seen enough, I think, at this point. Meanwhile, a decent force of Legion over here, but I mean 4th Legion, as strong as they are at holding the line, a unit like the Berserkers are going to inflict some pretty grievous wounds on them, to be honest with you. And again, it does speak quite highly of how Rhun and Isengard have been able to consolidate their forces at this point. They still have Nazkai, which they can send in, although I think the general has fallen in that unit. A general definitely fell in there. Could have been the Rudic one as well if they're in the Cardinals chosen, I suppose. Either way, they're not operating at full strength over there, the attackers, but definitely enough strength, I think, to do what they need to. Temple Executioners, again, Dol Amroth fleeing, routing off. The Catapult, which, to be fair, has probably used up most of its ammunition. Mostly in ways which, to be honest, probably weren't the best, but by thudding into its own wreckage, but there you go. Again, these Legion Bodyguard dealing with the Troll Drummers. The Mithril Guard moving in here to deal with these crossbows, but at the same time they're getting shot by those crossbows over there. Trying to entrap this. I mean, this is the sort of thing which could have worked, honestly, if it had been executed a little bit better. As it was executed pretty horrendously, especially from Dol Amroth. And now, forced thoroughly back on the defensive. It may be that he had to leave and he just committed everything in, but there are ways and means of doing that. Honestly, I think he probably would have been better at if he just set up his men in a defensive position around one of the choke points, because that was dreadful. Truly awful play. 4th Legion Shield Guard. Pikes on the front line as well. Not the easiest front line to wear down, to be sure, and actually, well, with the Nazkai as well, they should have all they need. They're going to need some pikes though as well. There goes Balin. Killed in melee with the crossbows. Says it all really about how this battle has gone so far. Old Dol Amroth units are routing. Snaga skirmishers are actually the first to make it into the enemy town centre. They'll be kicked out pretty quickly by the Iron Watch of Miramir. But here they are. The mighty Snaga. First into the breach. As we are now into the final 10k frames. And I think it's fair to say the attackers are probably going to go on to win this just because they have enough left in reserve. There's still quite a few elite units they're going to have to try and get out of the way, but again, it's been one of those strange games. I think neither side has really played this off to a T. I think the attackers over on the side where Isengard and Rhun were attacking, those two, the most impressive, but the most impressive just because they played it by the book. They didn't do anything outstanding. They just didn't make any silly errors that every other player today has been guilty of making. Every other player. I think probably the best of the defenders was probably Joey Wan Kenobi, just because I didn't see him leave his units out in the open like Aldance did, and we didn't see him make the almost comedic errors that Dol Amroth did. One player admits defeat. Who might that be? It may very well be Aldance, because Joey Wan Kenobi is the one with most of his units back here. His Hammers of Gundabad are still on the front line. His Iron Watch of Miramir easily able to get rid of the Snaga, but that is just a taste of what's to come from the defenders that still occupy the centre of Moria. Dragon's Breath is trying to get into a position where it can fly. I'd be very surprised if it did, to be honest with you. Even if it does, it's going to carve through its own men. But the attackers actually do need to commit a little bit more over here, because the defenders with the pikes and the heavy legion units, they're actually just winning this fight just because they have more numbers on the front line. Berserkers alone not going to be sufficient, they need more. And I think Rhun can provide more if they so choose. They've got so many units down here that they really shouldn't be. What have we here? Orc Maulers. Getting hit by the Khazad-Dum Reclaimers. Not the worst target for the Khazad-Dum Reclaimers, to be honest with you. Unshielded, easy pickings. Look at this though. A big force is going to be on its way sooner rather than later. Temple Executioners and Temple Guard. There's still going to be Nazgul in there as well. They may have taken some damage actually at the hands of the guards of Khazad-Dum, but they should still be there somewhere. Oh, that's Executioners. Where be the Nazgul? Can't see them. But doubtless they will have an impact. Little nook there. Sons of the Fallen moving forward to prevent the Dunheim Shadow Bows from just having their way with the defensive line, but once again, this could just be the Orcs trying to bait the defenders forwards into an engagement akin to the one that Dol Amroth so kindly gave to them. Over here though, the defenders are actually doing quite well. I mean, the attackers, they've done well over on this side so far, but I do think they need to buck up their ideas a little bit. The Dragon's Breath cannon is trying to fire, and they could do so actually point blank at this point. Their own units are kind of out of the way. Hammers of Gundabad are there. Isengard pushing uphill. Pikes. If they have Khazad-Dum Reclaimers still available to them, might be a good idea to try and deal with these pikemen, because slowly but surely they're going to be able to keep these dwarves at arm's length. It will take them a long time to punch through the Iron Watch and the Hammers of Gundabad, but they will be able to with that phalanx if these dwarves are unsupported, because the dwarves cannot just get in close here. I think that's 2 units of pikes as well, so this I think is just an occupying force, however. Ooh, they could get a point blank shot here, which could be really devastating. Indeed they do. That is grisly. Very nice damage done indeed. The dwarves need to push through and try and engage the crew. The crew of the Dragon's Breath cannon is actually very, very good as well in melee. So it may not be the easiest task. But they need to stop them from firing, otherwise the good work they've actually done there will be for naught. Joey One Kenobi is basically flying solo at this point. He's having to try and turn this game around all on his own. And I think it's safe to say I don't know if he's going to be able to do that. Sons of the Fallen. Victory against the Nazkai. I mean, I guess there's only 18 of them and there are 69 Sons of the Fallen, but still. I mean, the dwarves at this point are just getting bullied relentlessly by the Dragon's Breath, so looking a little bit ropey there, the attackers, for a while, but they've managed to turn it around with some good artillery positioning. And fortunate that the crew deigned to fire. Sometimes artillery is not the sort of thing that you can rely upon. But fortune favours them today. Hammers of Gundabad trying to get in close, which is exactly what you need to do against pikes, because as soon as they're in close quarters, those armour-piercing hammers are going to absolutely slaughter these Uruk-hai pikemen. Not good for them. Still some Dol Amrothian units. What have we here? Finally the Orcs are moving forward, which as they should at this point. This is only 1 unit of Sons of the Fallen. You can easily overwhelm them and then start attacking the town centre, which Rhun and Isengard over on the other side will want you to do. In come some Reclaimers with their throwing axes. They'll be able to do some damage on the approach, but it's not going to be enough to turn back the tide, I don't think. The Blackguard just forcing their way through, and they should be able to interrupt all of these axe throwers, which, to be fair, Joey One Kenobi has made wiser use of his Reclaimers than Aldance did when he was still a fixture on the field. A shower of throwing axes coming in. Ooh, the Dragon's Breath this time circumventing the units right in front of them and going after the units over here. Getting a nice hit onto the Hammers of Gundabad, albeit those Uruk-hai pikemen routing off in the face of the hammers. It's a lot of Orcs. I mean, they will return, and they just did in fact, but they need to bide their time and wait for a good opportunity to strike. Kummel's Shadow Guard pushing forward as well. Not a huge battle this, but still just trying to bide their time, wait for the opportune moment to commit everything forward and try and overwhelm the defenders. I think that's the name of the game here. For the attackers, Khazad-Dum Reclaimers continuing. Again, a bit lethargic for my liking. I mean, over here they are committing in now, to be fair. And the Sons of the Fallen really showing their value as a holding unit, because they are still holding on, just about. I mean, they will ultimately lose, of course. But they're giving the opportunity for those Khazad-Dum Reclaimers to get as much damage done as they possibly can. And against Maulers and Halberdiers, they most certainly should be able to do that. But as soon as everything starts getting committed in, I don't know. There's some elite units left, but it's going to be hard. Yeah, I mean, it's within 10%, but I don't know, those elites, they're strong, but are they strong enough? The numbers are going to favour the attackers, but Moria, sometimes you can mitigate that with the choke points. I'm just not sure. Trolls of the White Hand are still looming large. Sentries of Khazad-Dum being subjected to the AP of the Gamp Rim, and also now the solidity of the Scion Rim being added. Still the Sons of the Fallen hold on. In both instances where they were being overwhelmed in this battle, we've seen them just refuse to go down easily. Quite so. Khazad-Dum Reclaimers killing off that one shadow bow there. Fairly brutal fashion. Forward come the Morannon Halberdiers. A good target for the Khazad-Dum Reclaimers, but they may very well be out of ammunition at this point. They've pulled out their axes, but even in close melee, to be honest with you, Morannon units aren't really going to be the answer. And it is still possible that the attackers throw this away by being too generous with what they feed in, but somehow I doubt it at this point. I don't think the defenders have got enough in the town centre to stop this. The pikemen committing themselves at the right time, actually, when Rhun decided to commit forward in a more substantial way. The Gamp Rim are here, in come the trolls. What's left of the Nazkai? I like this again. Good timing from Rhun. Good timing from Butt Cheeks over here as well. Committing his weakened pikemen, but doing it at the right time to help Rhun's foray into the town centre. Untitled champions. I mean, again, I think it's safe to say that the Dol Amroth player is now AFK, which may go some way to explaining his very poor performance earlier. He was just blindly committing. These units can also be committed. If I were Rhun at this point, I'd just commit everything. Pack the town centre with as many units as you can, and trust them to get the job done. Rim getting into position. And those Mithril Guard will be able to fight their way out of that situation, but again, it's only in pockets where these elite units are going to be able to operate. A big committal happening over here as well, albeit Khazad-Dum should be victorious over here, but not without some losses. If they have anything in reserve, I bet they do. I bet they're being stingy again. No, not overly actually, just the one unit. They should commit everything though, really. Some Temple Executioners in here. Not seeing the Nazgul. Some Uruk Captains are there. AP, very useful. Rim firing into what remains of the dismounted Knights of the Silver Swan. Some Temple Executioners from Proxima Centuri, the armour upgrade, so they double back actually and are helping Isengard over here. Yeah, I mean, it's fairly clear to see at this point the attackers will win. Just a case of how many the defenders, remaining defenders, can take down with them. Flaming arrows. Mithril Guard continuing to fight hard on the front. Oof. Continuous stream of flaming arrows. Purely cosmetic though. And with the armour and shields the dismounted Knights of the Silver Swan have, they can actually withstand that pretty well. It looks very devastating though, doesn't it? Got Isengard squeezing in on what remains of the dwarves and the men of Dol Amroth here. There are the Nazgul. Still, all 10 of them still alive. So it goes to show how poor that Dol Amroth's sally forth was. Yeah, and at this point with all of the elites on the front line, even this dwarven defence is starting to crumble, albeit the Olag High are falling. to the Khazad-Dum reclaimers, as perhaps you would expect. Here in Balin's tomb, they are getting defeated. Isengard's still victory seems certain, even with the Scion Rim just outright overwhelming them and really mucking up their formation. That might be enough, honestly, to defeat. Now that the Meteor Guard are separated from one another, that's going to be enough. And now, finally, with the big committal, this is going to be where the attackers secure their victory. And I think deserved, honestly. I think the Mark of Night and Reni Zoras were the best players on the field today. Pretty sloppy over on this side of things, and if the defenders had been more up for the task, they could have gone on to win this battle, honestly. They had the tools, but they just didn't position themselves all that well, which in the case of Eldance I can understand, because it's not a name that I've seen before. In the case of Master Blaster, though, I really can. He's a player that's played a lot of the game. Just had a very, very off day, though. And in the end, that will be to the attacker's benefit. Fighting in here, Mithril Guard. Second Legion Axe Guard. Defeat is a distinct possibility, defeat almost a certainty. Military Genius. All the things. Pikeman, lowering their phalanx, squeezing the few remaining units. There's some Dol Amroth ones in there as well with the Black Swans, and some Knights of the Silver Swan. Unbreakable in the town centre, of course, so they will fight to the bitter end, but it will be a bitter end. Still these flaming arrows just broiling those Parathil champions. Khazad-Dum reclaimers are gone. And well done to the attackers. I think Rhun and Isengard over on that side of things deserve quite a lot of credit, to be honest with you, for what they were able to achieve. I think it'll probably be these Mithril Guard that are left standing at the end, because even with the flag rim in there, they would probably be fairly difficult to bring down. Brutal indeed. I think we can understand that. Orc Announcer. In fact, let's go up to times 6 speed. Every surviving defender is within camera shot after all, and that is going to be that. An impressive display though from Rhun and Isengard on that side. Elsewhere, it was sort of a question of who was going to make the bigger mistakes, and the defenders did, to be honest with you, and as the defenders, your mistakes do end up getting amplified, unfortunately for them, and that is why in the end the attackers were able to win with something to spare. So well played. And is that? I think we are done. Is that Balin himself? Don't think it is it? Nope, it wasn't. Victory for the attackers. Moria falls into the hands of evil. Dol Amroth's relief force was not enough to prevent that from happening. And yeah, I would definitely give Rhun, I think, and the Isengard player that was with him, they were definitely the two most impressive players today, I think. I mean, yes, Eldance got an impressive amount of kills. Master Blaster didn't. I have to say, I think Master Blaster was the most disappointing player on the field. For a player that knows the game as much as he did, wasn't good at all. The two Dwarven players, clearly less experienced, but I do think Joey Kenobi was the best of the defenders. Eldance, he got a lot of kills, but he could have got yet more kills if he didn't just leave his men out in the open to be shot. And even that could have been enough to turn the battle around in a big way, to be honest with you. But we may never know now. Meanwhile, let's see what did the damage for the two Mordor armies at the very least. Proxima Century and Bilbo Baggins. Temple Guard did well, again, as a result of just units being left out in the open to be shot. Everything else, more or less what you'd expect from a situation like this. I have to say the defenders didn't really take advantage of the fact that these compositions, I think both Mordor, if one Mordor player had gone for the full quality focus, wouldn't have been as against it. it's not the sort of thing I feel comfortable with fighting on the same side as, though. 1, quality Mordor army, yes. 2, less so. A Dunheim Shadowbows did well, as did the Temple Guard, again, a result of the ranged units being used well, being allowed to be used well, I have to say, by the defenders, which is why I think the attackers ended up, in the end, overwhelming them with a little bit left in the tank, as I said. So yeah, and a decent victory here for the attackers. Big thank you to Bilbo T. Baggins for sending this one in. A big thank you to all of the players for being a part of it. So I've sort of changed my schedule around a little bit. So from this replay being released, which should be on a Tuesday, I'm going to have set days when I release things. There's going to be 3 set videos a week, with the occasional stream mixed in there as well, I think, which can take many forms. It could be a divide and conquer campaign, could also be something in Bannerlord. I haven't quite made up my mind yet. I think actually I'm leaning more towards Bannerlord because it just gives a little bit more variety, I think, and it's something that I do need because I have been feeling the video fatigue quite hard lately. And obviously that does come down to me doing effectively the same thing in Lord of the Rings themed Total Wars, and I think Bannerlord would offer just something a little bit different. I don't really have the ideal setup for streaming, to be honest with you, which is why probably single player streaming is probably the way forward for me, because I don't think my internet can really cope with streaming online, especially given how spotty, especially Third Age Reforged can be online with the big battles. Like, it's a little bit less of a problem, I think, in Silmarillion when I stream that online, because the battles tend to be a little bit smaller, a little bit more manageable, and in general I actually do think Silmarillion is probably mechanically at least a little bit less fragile, but that is because I think Reforged has got a lot more in it at this point in time, a lot more taxing things, like obviously a lot more rangers, a lot more units that are more likely to cause a crash, a lot more maps that are more likely to cause a crash as well, which will happen online or when I'm doing a replay, which is one of the reasons, obviously, Reforged has got a lot in it, which is why it's just a little bit more mechanically fragile, I think. But yeah, it's one of those things worth considering. But again, from now on, I think the schedule is going to be Tuesday, Thursday, and then either Saturday or Sunday is going to be when the videos release, I think. I think that will be the future. And then the stream, I'm leaning more towards Sunday, honestly, because if I do stream, it will probably be on the Friday. So yeah, it's one of those interesting things, and I think it is. I think it's the best way to go about things, to be honest with you. So yeah, that is the plan moving forward. I'm going to be doing bulk recording as I normally do, and just sort of rejigging things to work a little bit better with that in mind. So yeah, hope you enjoyed this, and hope you'll join me for whatever is next.